Welcome to the Founders Fire podcast. This is Eric Beck, and I'm excited to get into a really important topic today. It's really crucial for any small business owner or entrepreneur, really any leader of any size organization, whether it's just yourself, maybe part of a family, a 1,000-person company, or a government. The topic today that applies to all of us equally is decision making. How do we make decisions? So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the root problem with decisions, and I'll tip my cards. It's the fear of death. We're going to be talking about decision fatigue, which is a very real phenomenon, and some great research on that. We're going to talk about evaluating decisions and understanding, is it possible to make a good decision that actually results in a bad outcome? And if so, why? We're going to talk about the 4 kinds of decisions and get a little bit into systemizing your work, not just you as a leader, but also your team, and how to do that. We're going to talk about type 1 and type 2 mistakes and what sets many entrepreneurs apart from the competition when it comes to how they make decisions. So let's start at the top with the word decision. We'll shorten that a little bit to decide, the verb. To decide has this common root, side, C-I-D-E. What does that remind you of? Let me give you a few examples. Suicide, homicide, pesticide. What is happening in each of those scenarios? Well, if you said death, something is dying, you're right. In suicide, the person is killing themselves. In homicide, someone else is getting killed. In pesticide, the pest is dying. Side means to get rid of, to eliminate, usually with a violent connotation. What does decide mean? It means to eliminate the alternatives. And the reason why many of us struggle with solid, good decision making is because we lack the commitment it takes to eliminate options. Now, this is very interesting because entrepreneurs are known for their optimism, which we'll talk about a little later, and how they see the world and how things could be different. And so they tend to see things that are possible that other people think are impossible. So how does a person like that, with that kind of wiring and that kind of passion, how do they get rid of, how do they eliminate, how do they kill the alternatives? It takes a lot of commitment. And ultimately, it is about vision. We don't make good decisions when we don't have a clear vision, meaning we're not clear on what we really, really want. So I'll ask everybody who's listening to this right now, just to take a moment and ask yourself, for today, wherever you are hearing this podcast, what do you really want right now? Do you want to get to work on time? Do you want to get that cup of coffee? Do you want to hear some new information that can help you? What do you want? Oftentimes, we are asleep at the wheel. We are watching the movie, so to speak, and this analogy speaks to me deeply, mainly because I love all the geeky things like ontology and teleology and epistemology. Those studies of how we think, how we know, how we perceive are so crucial. So this analogy kind of fits in those categories. Imagine that you're watching a movie, any movie that you happen to like. Okay, at some point in that movie, you probably forget that you're watching a movie. That's so cool. How could you forget that you're watching a movie? You become immersed in it, right? You start believing the movie, that the experience you're watching now is the experience you're having. That phenomena is a very, very good metaphor for how many people live their lives. They live their lives unconsciously, having never examined any of their beliefs, their presuppositions, what they're told to believe. They just go with the flow. And in doing so, they tend to fall asleep. And if you look at any of the spiritual traditions out there, one thing that they all have in common, or most of them have in common, is this idea of waking up, being born again, opening your eyes, seeing what cannot be seen, hearing what cannot be heard. How does that happen? We have got to wake up. We have to recognize that this life is like a river. And if we are just complacent, we'll float down it and we'll go wherever it goes. Ultimately, we want to have some agency. We want to be able to choose, to participate, to grow, to be a part of this awesome opportunity that we have. And when you think about this, you think about people falling asleep in their own lives. They're watching the movie and they didn't get that little jolt of like, oh, it's just a movie. I've got to eat some popcorn. I need to take a drink, or I'm not really comfortable in my chair. And when we do that, we kind of come out of the daydream. Well, for entrepreneurs who are maybe earlier in their career, they tend to get into the dream pretty quickly and start trying to improve it. What if it was this? And what if it was this? And they can get quite passionate about it. Some folks are on the opposite end of the scale. Maybe they're the more managerial folks. They don't really dream about anything. They just want to make it work, get through the day, leave me alone, head down, a little bit more pessimistic, right? What we've got to do, though, to strike the right balance so that our heart doesn't get crushed by our head, and so that our heart doesn't lead us off a cliff in which our head gets crushed, right? We need the balance between those two. And the way we do it is vision. Vision is not a flowery statement. To be the best in the Tri-County area. Vision is about a precise set of outcomes that we are bringing to the market. Okay, how are we going to help our customer? How is their interaction with us making their life better? So when you look at it, you can see that entrepreneurs are kind of set up to not make good decisions because A, they're dreamers. They're hopeful, they're optimistic, maybe too optimistic. And ultimately, what starts to happen is they don't want to say no to any of the alternatives because they start chasing success. Now, I want you to think about this. If you're not following a vision, you're likely just following what you think of as success. Meaning, if it works, we'll do it. And however it works, we'll do it. We just want to be successful. That's a terrible trap to fall into. And I want to ask you to guard against that. It would be better to aim at a target and hit it and move on to a new target than it would be to say, well, this is a good target, but I'm not really sure I can hit it. So I'll try that target. So I'll try this target. And eventually you're going to get into, I just want to hit any target, right? I just want the ball to go into the goal. I'm just out here playing basketball. I just got to get the ball in the goal, right? That desperation comes from what we've heard of from ancient times, where there's no vision, people cast off restraint. Where there's no vision, people perish. That is a statement of the heart. The heart will perish and be crushed under this drive for success, which is nebulous, not well defined, and ultimately just leads us into that. I guess it's an old Russian proverb. I've always heard it said that way. To chase two rabbits is to catch none. That kind of vision promiscuity means that we're not disciplined and committed. And when we become disciplined and committed, guess what gets easier? You got it, decision making. Because if I know, let's say I'm in Atlanta and I want to get to Los Angeles, right? And I know I need to be there today. And I know it. And I'm committed to it. Okay, you just made a lot of decisions. You're not going to walk. You're not going to crawl. No skateboards, no bicycles, no trains, right? No cars, no trucks. Think about it. A lot of things got said no to when you committed to your decision. Now, some of you guys know that I spent a lot of time in the martial arts, in particular, Japanese traditional karate. And I've loved it. I love the aesthetic of the Japanese culture, especially in that time period. I love the process. I love the little bit of Japanese that I know around those techniques and those terms. One of the things that I've really gleaned from being in lots of fights is the idea of committing to a plan. Now, if you go into a fight and you are overly committed to a certain technique, you're going to definitely lose. But it's also true that if you go into a fight and you're like, hey, well, let's just see what happens, that you're also pretty likely to lose. And the reason is that once a fight begins, we're going to find out who's more committed to their technique. Because a lot of guys will start a technique, the opponent will respond, and the guy will bail out of his technique, and it would have worked. But he just won't commit to it because, I don't know, he's afraid of getting knocked out, which is reasonable. But hey, you're in there to fight. So, you kind of assume you're going to get hit and probably pretty hard. Now, I say this having broken my orbital, broken ribs, broken fingers, blah, blah, blah. So it does happen. But what you start to develop, I would say, maybe around brown belt or your first black belt, is you start losing this concern about being hit and you start gaining a concern about seeing clearly. One of my teachers, of course, in Japanese, they use the word sensei to mean teacher or shihan to mean master teacher. One of my teachers, Shion Edwards, who taught in the San Francisco Bay Area, who I was lucky enough to train with for quite a while, he said it's not important to know what your opponent can do. It's important to see what they can't do. That changed the world for me because I suddenly knew what to look for. You see, if I'm looking for thousands of options, I'm going to be paralyzed. We're going to talk about decision fatigue in a moment, right? If I have all those options, it's like, oh my gosh, what do I even do? But if I know there's just one or two things, now my favorite move here is the foot sweep. I'm tall, but my legs are not especially long. So I have a very interesting way of needing to manage my center of gravity. And one of my favorite things to do is to engage my opponent with hand techniques, punches, back fists, grabs, all that good stuff. And in the midst of that flurry, I'm not really trying to hit them. I am. I'm not really trying to grab them. I am. I'm not trying to block their moves. I am. But what's really going on is I want to get my foot into the right position. And I know if I do, it's checkmate. Because once your opponent comes off their feet, you have about 5 seconds of freedom. And again, if it's a street fight, this is a little different. But let's say it's like tournament karate where you're not trying to kill somebody, you're just trying to win points. If I can take them off their feet, the chances of them blocking in the next 3 or 4 seconds are extremely low. Are there guys who can do that? Yes, there are. There are. But I know that is a favorite go-to for me. So if I notice that this guy's footwork is a little sloppy, a good example would be when he throws a front kick or a roundhouse kick, he lands kind of heavy on that kicking foot, and it takes him a half a second to get his balance back. Aha, I know what you can't do. You don't recover well from your kick. Now, your kick might be awesome, and I sure don't want to get hit by it. But if I can move just so and let you land, I know I can put my foot in the right position to kick out your front leg, grab you by the shoulder, drag you down, punch you in the face, and score the point. What your opponent can't do. Now, there's another phrase that comes from the martial arts, and I won't bore you with it too much, but I love this stuff. And it really goes like this. It says, to the beginner, there are many options, but to the master, very few. And that is true. In any given circumstance, the more educated and aware, we'll go back to this word we talked about before, awake, conscious, that we fully are present in the moment, the more we are right here, right now, the more we see what's true. And then there are few options. Because to get the outcome that we're looking for is pretty simple, okay? When entrepreneurs come to me or business owners get into Founders Fire, maybe they come to a retreat. We're doing a retreat in Destin, Florida, by the way, in just a little bit, in a few weeks here, coming up at the end of September. So check out the show notes for details on that. Would love to have you be there. When people come to our retreats, right, or they do the coaching or whatever, oftentimes they're a bundle of ideas. Okay. They're smart, they're hardworking, they have incredible work ethic, but they're spread too thin. And what we want to do is we want to we want to help them to remove some of those options. Could that work? It's possible. Could this work? It's possible. Let's get rid of possible. And let's start focusing more and more and more on probable. See, possible and probable, different things. Now, part of the challenge with entrepreneurs making decisions is too many decisions. And so I'm going to read you a little bit of research about this as we kind of transition over to decision fatigue. But I want you to be thinking about it. Decide. Eliminate the alternatives. How good are you at that? I would recommend taking up karate or racquetball or tennis or some sport because those athletic endeavors not only are good for you, get you moving, get the blood pumping, all that good stuff, they force you to make decisions, especially ones that are competitive, where it is literally you against the other person. Now, I like to do Spartan races and obstacle course and all that kind of stuff, ultra marathons. Those are awesome, but it's not really about you and the other person. It's about you and you. That has tremendous value. So again, not putting that down in any way. I love it. But when you are competing directly against another person who wants to make something happen that you don't want to have happen, this is where decision making can really get highlighted. So see what you can do in your world in the next little bit to start practicing eliminating the alternatives. One of the most important outcomes you're going to get from this is peace. Really good entrepreneurs are great at saying no, and it creates peace. Really so-so entrepreneurs are good at saying yes or maybe, and it ruins them. All right, one of the ways it does ruin us, and I don't want to sound like I'm the guy who's got it all figured out. I don't. And I've certainly been subject to this topic we're going to transition into right now, decision fatigue. Well, let's talk about decision fatigue for a second. So what does that mean? It's pretty obvious, but I thought I'd give you a little bit of a scholarly angle on this. This is from the Washington State University, a website on their an online article there. And it states, in essence, decision fatigue, and I'm quoting, is mental exhaustion resulting from the sheer number of decisions a person must make daily, leading to difficulty making or making good decisions. That may make sense if your decisions center on company strategy, what's the best marketing plan for a new product, or life-changing opportunities, should I take this new job? The human brain, however, can get caught up in making the same decisions over and over, like what to eat for lunch or what to wear to work. These mundane decisions, combined with the more important decisions and pressing issues, cause stress, emotional exhaustion, lead to poor choices. That's right. Decision fatigue doesn't just stop you from making decisions. It can cause you to make bad decisions. And some of those results are that you make impulse purchases. You procrastinate. You just say no all the time to everything. You get overwhelmed. So let's unpack that for a second. You may say, well, look, Eric, life is busy. I was talking to a client recently, and we were talking about the idea that whenever you talk to somebody these days, and let's say you haven't seen them in a little bit, and you're like, oh man, hey, good to see you. How's it going? Everyone, literally everyone is going to say, oh man, well, things are pretty busy. I'm hopping. And we think, yeah, that's good. That's good. A busy person, very productive, very good. When is the last time that you saw someone you hadn't seen in a little while and you said, hey, tell me what's going on? And they said, you know what? I work about an hour a day and then I just relax. I really take it easy. I really pride myself in living a peaceful, content life and not trying to fill up every minute of the day. Now, if you have actually had that conversation, would you just send me an email? Go to foundersfire.com and hop on one of those forums in there. I want to hear about it. Have you actually ever heard someone say that? No. Everyone says, oh, life is good. We're so busy. Really? Well, I'd like you guys, and I'm going to try to do this too. Whenever I hear somebody say so busy, I'm going to translate that automatically into the word asleep. I'm asleep in my life. Okay. So busy, meaning usually so fast and so much. Think of it like this. You're driving down the highway and there's a billboard on the side of the highway. Okay. And it could say something very simple like, gas next exit. Okay. Giant 4-foot letters, huge. Everybody knows what it is. Simple. Okay. What if it was, I don't know, the prologue to the Canterbury Tales in 10-point font? What would happen? Nothing would happen because you can't read it. Okay. Our life is much more the 10-point font than it is the 4-foot letters. And the degree to which we speed up is the degree to which we cause a willing kind of blindness. Blindness. How can we move forward in life? How can we do good if we can't see, if we don't know where we are? Ultimately, we've got to slow down. Slowing down means making better decisions. If we have too many decisions, though, we're going to get overwhelmed. We're going to just start saying no to everything. If we are, that's our personality. We're going to procrastinate. We're going to make impulse decisions. So I want you to think about this for a second. Okay, when I am procrastinating, why am I doing it? It's because of the other item we looked at. You're overwhelmed. Okay, when someone has too many decisions to make, combined with too much pressure, what happens? They shut down. They shut down. Procrastination is not about laziness. Procrastination is not about a lack of intelligence. Procrastination is overwhelm. It's too many decisions invading your brain, and that shuts you down. Now you can get into a cycle of I'm shut down, and because I'm shut down, I don't make the decisions. Because I don't make the decisions, I get behind. Because I get behind, I get worn out and exhausted. Because I'm worn out and exhausted, I get shut down. So anytime you find yourself as an entrepreneur or leader in what I call a catch-22, know that there is some part of you that is now asleep. Okay. There is a stronghold, a type of blindness that is invading your world. And you need to go to battle with that. You need to pull those strongholds down and rip apart those falsehoods that are in there. Because, and again, everybody starting their business has one. You've had this. I don't have enough money to advertise, therefore I don't get any clients. Because I don't have any clients, I don't have enough money to advertise. And there's your catch-22. Yeah, it's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. No, it's not. No, it's not. We've got to reject those false ideas. And we've got to think clearly. In Founders Fire, we call it precision leadership thinking, so that we can get out of those little jujitsu moves. Now, I'm not a jiu-jitsu specialist by any means, just a little bit of study, but I love it. I love the geometry of all that stuff and then how you can defeat it. So somebody gets you in a choke or somebody gets you in an arm bar or this or that, and there's a way to get out of it. So what's your technique for getting out of this catch-22? Well, I would say my technique is pretty simple. I need to go back to the clarity of my vision. Is there anything that I'm doing that is just not leading me in the direction I need to go? And likely there is. Are there things I should be saying no to that I'm not? Likely there are. And then the fatigue will start to go down. The clarity will start to go up. The quality of your decisions will get better. And even if you do make mistakes, they're going to be good mistakes. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Okay, so, well, instead of talking about it in just a second, I want to talk about it right now. It's actually next here on my list, evaluating decisions. So how do we evaluate a decision? How do we know if a decision is good? And can a good decision lead to a bad outcome? The answer is yes, it can. It can. When I make a really good decision, I can, say, I'm going to put my seatbelt on. Okay. And then you get in a car wreck and God forbid that flips the car over and into a lake. And now your seatbelt is stuck and, oh no, I shouldn't put my seatbelt on. So that's kind of a silly one, hopefully not too terrifying. I don't want to freak anybody out, but right, that would be like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. I made a good decision. It turned out bad. The reality is, though, that we're always playing the odds. Good decisions are ultimately something that we've got to take control of and say, look, I'm going to follow a principled approach here. And it doesn't mean that every time I make the right decision, it's going to produce the right outcomes. Back to chasing success. Many people have that problem. They say, hey, I made this decision. Somebody was like, that's a crazy decision. No way that's a good decision. And then what happens? It works out. They go, see, it worked out. It was a good decision. Not necessarily. You see, the decision is not measured purely by the outcome, but it needs to be measured as well by the process. This is a trust issue. Your people will likely not trust you, even if your decisions turn out right, if your decision-making process remains hidden from them. What does that mean? It means there's got to be a system for how you make decisions, and that's part of what we're going to get into here. So evaluating a decision can't just be, did it work out? It needs to be, did we follow a similar process so we can grow and we can scale? All right, I want to take this big philosophical conversation and boil it down as we're starting to land the airplane. How do I implement this, let's say, with my team? Well, there are 4 kinds of decisions, and they're very important to know the difference between them. And when you've properly systemized a job function, a role, you include a decision grid. So let's say it's a customer service person. You just think to yourself, okay, what are the 3 or 4 or 5 most important decisions this person will likely make, let's say in a given month? Not necessarily every day. We're not talking about little decisions, okay? But big, important decisions. What are they? Okay, good question. Good question. What are they? Okay. Well, let's line them out. If you're not sure, talk to the person and see what they have to say. Between the two of you, it should be pretty clear what those important decisions are. Now we want to specify how that decision is made. Let's say that one of those important decisions is about customer refunds. Okay, what do we do with that? What we do with that is we say anything over $100 is a decision that needs to be made with your manager. Anything under $100 is a decision you need to make on your own. So what we're saying is for the refund area, we have an advisory decision and we have a unilateral decision. Okay, if we don't specify this, what will happen is chaos. They won't know how to make the decision. They'll always come to you or the manager when they really should be handling on their own. And the worst of all things is they won't mature. Now, you guys have heard me say this many times. Think about maturing employees. Are we here to mature our employees? We are, in fact. And this is the way I look at it. The true purpose of business, the highest calling, maybe you want to say the spiritual purpose of business, is not to buy something for $1 and sell it for $2. It's not just supply and demand. Okay. Well, what is it? It is to facilitate the daily realization of the calling of your team in the service of your market. In other words, it's always about people. Well, how in the world would I do that? How do I help people realize their calling? I'll tell you what you do. Help them mature. How do I help them mature? Help them make better decisions. There we go. See, now that's what I'm talking about, people. If we're just serving the dollar, we're just polishing the brass on the Titanic. Okay, but if we are using the marketplace that we're in, the buying and selling and all of that sort of stuff as a platform for making people's lives better, both our customers and our team, now we're doing something that I believe is creating lasting wealth, real wealth, something that we can be proud of. All right, so back to systemizing. Part of systemizing is the decision grid, and we just talked about that with customer service. That's one decision. Okay, and in this case, it had two aspects. There's an aspect that's advisory, and there's an aspect that is unilateral. Well, there are two other kinds of decisions. One is consensus, majority rule. When this happens, we got to go to the management team, let's say, and if most of us want to do it, we do it. Or to your group of managers, or to your team lead, or whatever it is. And when there's more than just the two people, all right, let's see what's the majority rule. And then finally, there's a unanimous decision. That just means that if we all don't want to do it, we're not going to do it. This could look at like a senior hire opening a new location, something very, very important like that. That's where we need to say, hey, this is how we're going to decide. Now, most companies that I've worked with in the last 24 years don't have anything like this. And it absolutely hamstrings them. Because while they may make, quote, right decisions, they're not good decisions. Their team cannot follow them. We're going left today, tomorrow we're going right. Today we're selling blue dump trucks. That's all we're selling. That's what we do. We're all about blue dump trucks. And tomorrow we're going to sell green tractors. How does that feel to your team? Well, it's disorienting, right? This is destabilizing. In fact, it's a type of a breach of trust. When we say we're going to do something and make that decision, we are trusted by our team that we have eliminated the alternatives. Okay, we were like, well, Eric, that's just kind of like overly idealistic. I mean, you can't always stick to your decision. True. So how do we fix that? A decision grid, meaning there is a method to the decision. And when that is shared and we have to change plans, we don't break down the relationship because they know we didn't just respond to pressure. We actually went through a process. In fact, every role in the company has a process that we go through. The decision grid is something truly, truly helpful that many people miss, and they miss it because they never think about it. They're just running and gunning and busy, going too fast. Ultimately, we've got to take our opportunity to see what's really happening at the level of decisions, both for us and for our team. Now, let me finish with this. Type one, type two mistake. If you've heard me on webinars or other podcasts, you've probably heard me mention this. I don't know the original research on this, so please forgive me for not citing it, but it's not new with me. I didn't create it, so I'll just share it with you as someone else's. Type one mistake. You're sitting on the savannah 10,000 years ago, eating your roast beef sandwich. You hear some rustling in the leaves behind you, and you say, you know what? It's probably just a squirrel. You keep eating your roast beef sandwich, but it turned out to be a saber-toothed tiger. Okay, type one mistake. Type two mistake. You're sitting on the savannah 10,000 years ago, eating your roast beef sandwich, just loving it, and you hear a rustling in the leaves behind you. You jump up, grab your spear. It turns out to be a squirrel. Okay. This is in some cases called a negativity bias, that type two mistake, where we tend towards the negative because tending towards the positive doesn't keep you alive, but tending towards the negative does. And so as the human race has gone on generation by generation by generation, epigenetically passing down habits and tendencies and all kinds of stuff, one of the things that we've passed down is this negativity bias. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing because it keeps us alive. But it's also a bad thing because we don't live in the world of saber-toothed tigers anymore. And an email coming in that isn't phrased just right, or a text that isn't replied to as soon as you think it should be replied to, can cause our nervous system to interpret this as, oh my gosh, there's a rustling in the leaves. I bet it's a saber-toothed tiger. Now, there's a lot of psychology and other factors that go into this that we won't talk about today, but I want to talk about it as it relates to decision making. You see, the reality is that exposing yourself to certain pressures is a decision you need to decide on, right? In other words, am I going to expose myself to social media, where it is a megaphone of rustling through the leaves? A megaphone. It is what do you call it? The panic pimps running wild with you. Yeah, but I only listen to the ones that I agree with. That's even worse. Whatever happened to hearing contrary ideas and not hating the person? Just learning from someone else's point of view. What about self-criticism? Whoever you listen to on social media, do they ever criticize themselves? I mean, like legitimately criticize their own ideas or their own party or their own group or their own whatever. You see, when we start to get siloed information that is just hitting the panic button constantly, that is a bad decision on our part. Well, I got to stay informed. No, you don't. No, you don't. You think you do, and you're addicted to the hit, to the adrenaline hit, but you don't need it. And it adds to your decision fatigue, and it adds to an inaccuracy in your thinking and a flaw in your approach to living out your calling. It's literally like going out on the football field to try to win the Super Bowl and tying your shoes together and thinking, well, I'm a great athlete, it'll work out. No, that's not how we're going to do it. So decision making also relates to what we're allowing into our environment, what we're saying yes to. And my recommendation to you is turn it all off. I know there's some good stuff out there. There's some great stuff out there. Great, turn it off. It's not worth it. Find that information a different way. Back to the book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, that was written before the turn of the century. Doesn't that sound old? The famous phrase from that book was, the medium is the message, meaning the container of the transmission has just as much impact on the message as the message itself. You see, if I get that, quote, good information in a way that stresses me out, freaks me out, keeps me all wound up, what do you think is going to happen? Ulcers, high blood pressure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the more pressure and pain we're under, the worse things get. But it doesn't have to be that way for you. You can break free. You can wake up. You can start to approach your life and your calling with the fire that is in your heart, those deep purposes that need to be drawn out. And if you do that, what's going to happen? Are you going to succeed at everything you do? No. But your effort in itself will be a success. because you're going in the right direction. You're making the right quality of decision. That decision is in alignment that will bring alignment into your team and into your business. And ultimately, that's the kind of profit we're looking for, not just the financial kind, but the kind that makes people's lives truly better, starting with you. Remember, you can't put on the oxygen mask with someone else. You're not supposed to do that first. So put it on yourself first. Why? Because if you don't, you might pass out and then nobody gets helped, right? So we're talking about an integrated solution, a systems level solution. When we think at the systems level, not just the tactic, but at the systems level, we're always looking at several things: the integration, a holistic approach, the long-term benefits, as well as the outputs in a lot of different directions. The win, 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 win. It can't just be, hey, I made money and I'll do something good with the money. No, not good enough. The way we make money has got to be transformed. And I think as we wake up, in particular, to how we're making decisions, we're all going to see incredible value created. And listen, Founders Fire Tribe, we need you. We need you to deploy where you are and to start to spread this way of doing business so people's lives are truly transformed. Hey, if you're interested in knowing more about this, again, I want to invite you to Destin, Florida. It's coming up September 26th. Love to see you there. 4 days of concentrated coaching with like-minded business owners, where we're going to really get into the nuts and bolts of how to take your business to the next level. Yeah. That sounds great, Eric. How about say something for real? How about this? Getting you out of time debt, systemizing your work, making sure that your business is scalable. And if you're interested in selling your business, getting you ready to do it. How about that for some deliverables? We'll touch on sales, marketing, and how to grow your market share as well. Love to see you there, guys. Thanks for listening to Founders Fire Podcast. This is Eric Beck. We'll see you guys next time.